Build your fits of the day with Abercrombie's newest denim drop. I'll tell you where to start. Abercrombie's 90s straight jean goes with any shirt from tees to sweater polos. Super versatile. Their loose and baggy jeans are more trend forward, so I grab those when I go out with friends. Right now, get 25% off on almost everything at Abercrombie. Offers valid in stores and online January 23rd, 2025 to January 28th, 2025. In U.S. and Canada, exclusions apply as indicated. Online price reflects discount.
It is incredibly rich with ideas, it's beautifully animated. As we have said, there is just so much going on, and yet it still manages to keep it fairly sort of simple, even as it just keeps on like hitting you with ideas and images. It doesn't make it too overwhelming, because I think what's actually kind of good about it is that it's still ultimately like Miyazaki is making a film for kids. It's not like a family thing. He's not like doing little jokes for the adults. No, this is for kids. He's specifically talking to kids and how to behave and how to see the world and how the world might scare them, and that's okay. It's such a great movie.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Flixwatcher Podcast. Today I'm joined by Paul.
Hello there.
Emma.
Hi.
And Helen.
Whoop whoop.
And we're getting spirited away. Thank you as always to Mighty People for their mighty tunes, and thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for editing this podcast. Please do remember to head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts to give us a 5-star rating and a massively glowing review. And also, if you want to join in the conversation with us on Twitter, we are at FlixWatcherPod, or if you prefer Instagram, we are at FlixWatcher on that platform.
Hello film fans, welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher Podcast. Our guests today are Emma and Paul. Over to you please, Paul, to say hello to our listeners and tell them a little bit more about who you are and what you do, please.
Hello all listeners, I'm Paul Costello. I'm one half of, I guess I'm 1/4 of the Facial Attractions podcast, but I'm also one half of the Yearbook Committee Podcast, which I do with here Emma.
Here.
Right here. We talk about teen movies and all the good stuff, all the tropes, all the happy times and all the really bad movies that kind of make up that incredibly rich genre.
We've had kind of a purple patch, which is a good period of teen movies recently. A few that I haven't seen, like Bottoms, which I'm just very keen to see, but I've not seen it yet. But what's your thoughts on this, the recent crop versus the previous golden era of like late 80s and mid 90s?
And the noughties, the early noughties.
Oh yeah, 1999 was a vintage year for teen movies.
That's 90s still.
Yeah, the ups and downs really carried over into the early aughts. Yeah, I mean, kind of as we've went through the podcast, the amongst the things we've really properly started to grapple with is like the glowing sort of glory age of the 80s teen movies. Most of them ain't great.
Oh, no.
It's not even a matter of them not aging well. They're actually just maybe not that great. The 90s really sort of started to like do something interesting, and that's kind of where that feels like a lot of the better stuff has started to kind of come through. But then saying that, that's kind of where we came up being of that age bracket when those movies were out, so maybe we would say that.
I mean, I think that's maybe why we're getting a good glut just now, because maybe the filmmakers who grew up watching the same age as we were are now making those movies. So, I mean, we can live in hope. That's
been the theory where you had the kind of one wave, which is like the Porky's kind of wave of films came about. And then like 20 years later, we had the American Pie and Clueless from one end. So Porky's, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Then you had also the kind of the nudie ones like American Pie through to Clueless and Cruel Intentions. And now you've got another wave coming through now. So it's like that, almost like 20 years or so. There's a batch of people who've grown up with those films and think, yeah, I can make my new teen movie variation.
It does tend to come along. It's something like every 7 years or something like that. There's a single teen movie that comes out and goes, that's a classic. That's a good one. So it has that tendency to be like, it's Heathers, it's Clueless, it's Mean Girls, it's Easy A. It's, you know, they have kind of a cyclic kind of form to them, which is pleasing, but you also kind of go, this is going to do really well, but also other people are going to make stuff that's maybe not great as a result of this. They're going to learn some not great lessons.
Well, we're here talking about Spirited Away, which is not a teen movie. I don't know how old Sen Chihiro is, but Emma, this is your choice. Can you tell us, first of all, why you chose it? And then we'll get a synopsis in 60 seconds or less.
So I'll go for why I chose it first. I really love folk and fairy tales. Like, that's my jam. And this is just a beautiful almost Alice in Wonderland-esque telling that's just wild and busy, and there's so much going on, but there's also just this single cool little kid to follow all the way through, and she's just going on a horrible, weird adventure. And that's why I chose it.
Okay, and the timer for your synopsis starts now.
Okay, so Chihiro's moving house and her parents are literally greedy pigs, literally, and she gets sucked into this world full of spirits. She ends up getting a job in a bathhouse and, yeah, a rabbit hole she falls down, metaphorically, and it's lovely. I feel like that's the best you can sum it up because so much just weird stuff happens in it. She just goes from strength to strength and tries to save her parents. And I think I'll leave it there.
I'm happy with that one.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Helen, any thoughts? Have you seen this before?
I have. So this was the first Studio Ghibli film that I saw. I saw it at the Aberystwyth Art Centre in 2001. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, maybe I might have kind of caught bits of Ghost in the Shell or Akira on late night Channel 4 and obviously watched kind of Disney and cartoons.
So you just talk about general animation here, not specific Ghibli. I was just gonna clarify.
And then watch this in the days where I may have smoked weed, and I was like, whoa, this is fucking amazing. Look at all that weird shit on screen. Oh, it's great. I love it. So yeah, that was my first one, and then I've tried to kind of like keep up with them kind of as they have come from there. But yeah, this is my first introduction, and yeah, I mean, I think you've kind of nailed it. There's just so much going on. Like, we could talk for hours and hours and hours about all the little weird details. I mean, basically, it's like a spirit bathhouse and all these kind of like spirits. And there's a tarantula man with long arms that powers a machine. There's little cute little soot balls with their little faces that carry things around. And there's like a little bird/duck soup and little black ghost and things, and there's a spirit with no face that makes a weird sound. He can't talk, but he makes a weird sound. Then he ends up eating people, and at some point there's a sludge monster, people turn into pigs, a kid turns into like a flying cat dragon thing, and yeah, it's lovely.
Like your dragon from Neverending Story.
Yes, it's
like
very Falcor, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Paul, your thoughts on Spirited Away?
I love Spirited Away. It's hard not to love Spirited Away, to be honest. I'm not sure exactly how many times I've seen it. It's 3, maybe 4, 5 times. It is incredibly rich with ideas. It's beautifully animated. As we have said, there is just so much going on, and yet it still manages to keep it fairly sort of simple, even as it just keeps on like hitting you with ideas and images. It doesn't make it too overwhelming, because I think what's actually kind of good about it is that it's still ultimately like Miyazaki is making a film for kids. It's not like a family thing. He's not like doing little jokes for the adults. No, this is for kids. He's specifically talking to kids and how to behave and how to see the world and how the world might scare them, but that's okay, that you can deal with it. It's such a great movie. It tends to be not the one that I recommend to people when I sort of say you should watch Miyazaki. I tend to go for like maybe Totoro or Princess Mononoke, because I want people to get into it through one of those movies and then find Spirited Away on their own and get their head blown off by it, because they'll be like, holy shit, this is incredible. Yeah, it's great stuff.
Like Helen, this was my first one I saw, but I was in my 30s when I first saw it, and it was given to me as a DVD present because I kept on saying, I've not seen Spirited Away. I've not seen any Studio Ghibli films. And there was no rhyme or reason for it, why. It just hadn't got around to it fully. And I remember like clearly the launch of all 4 on, Channel 4's new streaming service, and they had a Studio Ghibli season, and Film 4 always had a Studio Ghibli season, and I loved Film 4, but for whatever reason I just never got around to watching a Ghibli film. But this is the one everyone talked about, and I was like, yeah, I can see why. This is great. I feel on this rewatch for me, I thought maybe it's a bit too long for the fact that it's just
vibes.
It's just lots of different vibes and vignettes and things going on. You kind of like, I really love this, but also does it need to be 2 and a bit hours long? But then something inevitably would happen, and I think for me that what struck me also this time is that it just looks amazing.
Oh yeah,
hand-drawn animation. There's such levels of details in people's eyes. Sometimes like the big boss person who's running the whole place, when you have a really big close-up on her face, you can see her eyes glistening. No Face looks amazing. That's kind of that stench monster. That whole sequence is like whoa, how do you even come up with that kind of stuff? It's a really big vibe, this film, and a bit of a hang rather than, I think, like a story about like Totoro or Howl's Moving Castle where I feel there's like a driving narrative. So I can understand when this first came out, I was like, well, this is everyone's favourite Studio Ghibli film, certainly. But I think the other ones, because they have a bit more of a narrative, I'm like, I actually prefer Totoro and Howl's Moving Castle in terms of the overall filmic nature of them. That was my little stance there, guys.
I agree on the narrative, having watched a lot more of them now. And I think Miyazaki is a little bit guilty on running on vibes. And I think the difference with Totoro is it's shorter. And with Howl's, it's based on a book. The structure is kind of given to him. So definitely with you, having also watched The Boy and the Heron, that he does tend to really go for vibes and perhaps not necessarily story.
The funny thing is I watched Kiki's Delivery Service for the first time last month.
Okay.
So cute.
It's pretty similar. It is just Little Witch is sad. Let's stay with her for a while. And I do file these under films I want to crawl inside and live in. But yeah, Kiki's is pretty similar in that there isn't really much going on. It's really just, her broomstick. Like, it's just nice.
Talking cat.
Oh yeah, yep.
Just vibes.
You say it like it's a bad thing, but I'm all for a vibe movie. That's great stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of my favourite films, which I was talking to a friend about recently, which is also does age depending. I think how much you like it depends on how old you were when you first saw it. Is Dazed and Confused, where it's just like things happening. Just enjoy the people you're hanging out with, and that's completely valid kind of film. So yeah, 100%. I think you're just not as used to seeing that in an animated form versus an indie filmmaker first steps into cinematic realm. One question we always ask when we get Studio Ghibli on here is, how did you watch it? Did you watch it subtitles, original soundtrack, or do you watch it with the dubbed version?
See, I'm not a stickler on this, and it kind of depends on the mood I'm in that day. So my rewatch, I did watch the dubbed version, but in all fairness, I do think that the great thing about these films is that because, especially like from Spirited Away on, like because Disney kind of had a hand in distributing them, the voice cast is usually pretty good.
I don't know what the voice cast is in this one, actually.
It's not a big one on this one, is it? It's no big names.
The little girl was in Lilo and Stitch, probably around about the same time.
Ah, okay.
And Thingy that's in all the Pixar movies.
John Ratzenberger.
Yeah. So I don't mind watching these ones dubbed. But at the same time, I did go to a screening of Howl's Moving Castle and it was in the original and I was like, I should be watching it like this all the time.
Yeah. I tend to watch them subtitled. Although I'm absolutely fine with you want to watch stuff because sometimes you're maybe can't necessarily don't have the patience or the eye movement or whatever to subtitles. So the dub is absolutely fine. And as the years kind of went on, the Ghibli movies just got kind of better and better, more stacked casts. So there's always really good work behind them. My one kind of thing with them is that it has a tendency to be, because Spirited Away is the example of it, is that it has a tendency to be, there's extra stuff that I feel like doesn't need to be there.
Yes.
There's a final line that's in the dubbed version of Spirited Away that doesn't exist in the subtitle version, and there's a little bit of that's a weird thing to end on.
They do it earlier on as well, like the point when Haku turns into a dragon for the first time, she goes, "He's a dragon now," which always feels so odd because it's almost as if they were like, nobody's going to get that that's him, even though kids would absolutely get that was him. Yes, you saw him turn into a dragon. But I think one of the later ones is like that too. One Liam Neeson was in.
Ponyo.
Yeah, it has a really weird line where do they just go, they have wings now. It was maybe Tales from Earthsea. And it's so out of place. And I'm curious in case that's what that was as well, where they've just gone, oh yeah, no, Western audiences won't understand what's going on, even though if you just trust your audience, they probably will. Well,
that's it. Like for Spirited Away, it doesn't even seem to necessarily be, it's a matter of like clarifying the the dubbed version. Like as they're driving away, they sort of go, so starting school pretty soon, Chihiro, how you feeling about that? Yeah, I can handle it. Whereas in the subtitled version, the non-dubbed version, as they're driving away, it's just silence. There's no talk at all. So there's just a bit of a, why did you put that line? Who's that for? Like,
there's just no need.
Yeah.
I think for me, I no problem at all with a subtitle film, but just sometimes you just feel a bit knackered, or you just feel a bit like, I just want to press play and go.
Yeah.
And that has stopped me with, there's like TV shows like Call My Agent, which is a French TV series, which I really, really love, but also I can never just put it on and just vibe out with it. I have to be in the right frame of mind to do it. So if it's something like this where I just think I need to watch it right now, then it's probably going to be in the dubbed version, which was this in this case. But one of my favourite things is to do the dubbed version, but also have the subtitles on to see how massively they vary from what they say versus the subtitle. You kind of like, well, both those kind of make sense, but also at the same time, it's nonsense. So which one is it?
No.
Yeah.
Chihiro and Sen, I think probably her character is one of the things that drives, is probably the reason that people rate this so highly, because she's not precocious, but she's not a wallflower. She gets in there, she gets stuck in with the stink demon when all the other spirits in the world were like, running away from it. And she's just such a great rounded character. And I can see if kids do love this, it would wholly be because of her. And she's just got this like amazing energy, right?
Yeah. I think one of the great things about her is that, see, because she's got a goal, like it's save my parents, and that carries her through everything. So she has to have this job so that they'll not eat her parents, and she has to help this person because they'll help her do this thing. But at the same time, she's also just kind and good-natured. So once she has the thing that will turn her parents back into humans, hopefully, she uses it to help two other different people. So I think that because she's driven, but ultimately she's always trying to do, it's not even just about doing the right thing. It's just because this person needs that and I have it and I can help them, so I'm going to do it. And I think that's what's great about her. And one of the films that kept popping up in my head as well in the rewatch is Coraline has the same thing, because with Coraline, it's very much like my parents are in the other world, or they're stuck behind a mirror, or wherever they are. And it doesn't matter how scary this is, I'm just going to go get it done. And I think Spirited Away has that kind of same sort of attitude of, I've got a thing to do and I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to kind of sacrifice who I am in the process. And I think I just love her. She's just adorable. She's also at times just like, she's got really good sad face.
Their little cheeks.
Yes.
She was never whiny with it. Like when she's trying to get the job, she was never like, please. It's just like, she's forthright, steadfast.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesomeness. Is there anything guys want to say before we head to the scores?
I was just going to say it made me really, really want to spa.
It made me really, really want the food. Studio Ghibli know how to do like food and make it look amazing.
Even if it's food you don't normally like I don't eat bacon, but every time I watch Howl's Moving Castle, I'm like, that is the most delicious looking bacon ever. The cool thing about the food in this film, though, is I think there are definitely times where you're like, I want to eat that now. But then when our parents are starting to turn into pigs, there is just sort of like a psychological thing where you're like, this food's actually disgusting. There's so much of it. And like greed's kind of all the way through the film. So there's definitely points where the food is like, I will take it now, please. And other times where I'm like, put it away. Put it away.
Nah. Yeah. Okay, let's head to the scores.
I'm Sam Clements.
Llévate más de lo que esperas todos los días con el nuevo McValue en McDonald's. Ahora puedes comprar uno y sumarle otro por $1. Así que cuando tu equipo favorito enfrente a sus rivales, enfrenta tus antojos con $5 Meal Deals. Y si estás corriendo para alcanzar el desayuno, corre al app para llevarte ofertas antes del cutoff. Tú decides, y con McValue, tu decisión siempre rinde más. Precios y participación pueden variar. BOGO $1 válido para un producto de igual o menor valor. Debe estar registrado en Rewards para ofertas en el app.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
Host of the 90 Minutes or Less Film Festival, another podcast in the Stripped Media family, a podcast that celebrates movies under 90 minutes long. Each episode, I'm joined by a special guest who selects a movie to join our prestigious lineup. Past guests have included fellow Stripped Media family members Martin and Sam from Song by Song, and Kobe from Flixwatcher, and Dave from The Wire Stripped. Search for us now on the app you're currently listening to this podcast, or join us at 90minfilmfest.com.
to our Flixwatcher scores. They are always out of 5, and you can have decimal places if you wish. And we'll start with you, please, Emma, with your recommendability.
5. Absolutely 5. I think you'd struggle to find someone who wouldn't find something enjoyable in this. So I would 5.
Paul?
I'll give it 5. Again, I don't really know that there's anyone I couldn't recommend this to and not have something for it, not gain something from it, not just enjoy it immensely. There's too much good in it to ignore.
There's too much good and we need more good in the world right now.
Yeah, man.
Rishi Sunak abusing...
He's just never watched Spirited Away.
What kind of nonsense is he up to today? Helen?
So for me, I think Spirited Away is a bit like kind of the ideal mushroom trip in that there's loads of weird stuff, but it's not really terrifying. It's just kind of cool and interesting, and it lasts a couple of hours. So on that, I'm also going to give it a 5. I think for me, because it was the first and I've now seen quite a lot, and they do vary in kind of the vibes and what's going on. And I've seen a few that I'm a bit like, it's not really kind of the Spirited Away level of like, wow, weird, this is really fun. So yeah, I'm going to give it the big 5. Our friend Will, this is the one, go for it.
Do you want to clarify that our friend Will point for...
every time we have an animation, we say how he doesn't watch animation. Maybe this will turn him. Maybe this could be his year.
That's a crime.
Yeah, so we have a friend called Will who just blatantly, frankly, without reason that he's given us, doesn't watch any animated film. And as much as we say animation is not a genre, it's just like a medium. It doesn't change things. But I think he's going to watch one animated film this year because he has a podcast and blog called Exploding Helicopter. What's it called? Exploding Helicopter? Yeah.
It's about helicopters that explode in films.
Yeah. And there's one frame of a helicopter in jeopardy in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And
there you go.
He asked us, do we need to watch it? And I was like, well, there's a helicopter in jeopardy. It's your right. It's your duty to watch this film. The helicopter doesn't explode.
I feel like that'll sell him. That'll sell him on animation in general,
don't think so.
right?
I think, when people randomly just dig their heels in, it's not going to change. So you're 5, Helen. I'm going to go 4.5. I'm not sure where it loses a 4.5. I think I would probably go for a tosser over this because they're just a bit tight, a bit shorter. This is a bit weird in places. It's like, what? So I think you have to prep people a bit as well before going into it, or know them really well that they'll just be able to take weird stuff as it comes. Repeat viewing score, Emma.
Well, I'd go 5 again because I feel like it's one of these films where, because there's so much in it, every time you watch it, you see something else. Or you look for something else, or as we were saying, like sub 3 dubs means you've got at least 2 viewings in there. So yeah, 5.
Sub 3 dubs. Paul?
Yeah, I'd probably go 5 as well. It's, as Emma says, there's always something to be found in it. You can watch it one time and just be like blown away by the incredible animation. You can watch it the second time and be like, man, there's really a lot of bit of capitalism and greed. And you can watch it a third time and be like, man, this is totally about environmentalism. There is so much in there to dig into. It's great. There's so much there.
All those greedy spirits after the gold, right?
Yeah.
Helen?
I think its length is a bit long. This is only the second time I've seen it. I saw it when it first arrived and then this time, and I think I'm just trying to work my way through the Studio Ghibli ones that I haven't seen, so I haven't really watched many of them, only Totoro because it's a lot shorter and my favourite. So I'm going to give it 3.5. I enjoyed it. I don't know, it's probably going to be quite another 20 odd years before I maybe come back to it again though.
20? Whoa. 3.5. I'm going to go 3. I think I'll watch other Ghiblis more frequently than this. I think more frequently than once every 20 years, certainly. Yet I've given it a lower score.
It's like a good mushroom trip. It can only be done once every 20 years.
It only happens once every 20 years. A perfect mushroom trip. That perfect combination of psilocybin, your mood and your environment coalesce once every 20 years to produce Spirited Away. I don't know what I'm talking about. Emma, small screen score.
I feel like that was in tone with Spirited Away. Miyazaki would be proud. My small screen score. I first saw this in DVD, so I wouldn't have minded until I saw Howl's Moving Castle in the cinema and was like, oh no, this is so good. I've seen other ones. Like I saw Ponyo in the cinema when it came out. I don't know. That's really hard. I'm going to go 3.5 because I don't think you're losing too much, but it's so beautiful and there is a sense of scale where I think a big screen would be nice. So I'm going to go 3.5.
Paul?
I think I'd maybe go 3.5 to 4 because, yeah, it's beautiful and it's great, but you're right, there's the sense of scale and the sheer, like, just breath of air that just rushes through it is the kind of thing that totally kind of demands a large screen to really properly, fully feel it. It's a weird thing to consider it, like, hand-drawn, like, 2D animation to be so textural in terms of, like, how it makes you feel. I mean, you can literally feel the spray of the water and you can feel the breath of the wind, and that really shines through on a bigger screen. Yeah, so you don't lose too much on a small screen, but it definitely needs a big screen to get the full brunt of it.
So what's your score? So you said 3.5 to 4. Or do you want 3.5 to 4? As in
3.78. Sure.
3.78. Helen?
I mean, call me heathen, but I'm quite fine watching them at home. I've only ever seen 2 at the cinema and the rest I've seen at home, and I'm all right with that. I'm okay. I don't know what the experience, I think, was the same. So I'm going to give it a 5, I think.
On this rewatch, I was thinking at many parts, like, whoa, when the stink demon, they unplug him or it, and the water's bubbling out. And it's like, I just don't know how they did that in animation. It just looks redonkulous. So there's a few of those bits where I think it'd be really cool to see it on a bigger screen. And I've never really taken note of the soundscape, but I'm sure there's a lot of stuff going in there, but which I haven't taken on board. So I think that'd be really good to get that. So I'm going to go for 4 because, it's, as Helen said, it's absolutely fine. No real dramas on the smaller screen at home. But I think there's a few edges and layers that you gain from watching the bigger screen you can get a hold of. Engagement score, Emma.
I'm going to just sound like a broken record and say 5 again because I know the length seems like, and I know we've definitely discussed the length, but I didn't really feel the length because, again, I think I was kind of, by this rewatch, I was like, this is Alice in Wonderland and I'm fine with that, because that kind of thing where you're just going from bit to bit to bit. And I think that's not necessarily the length, but the kind of episodic nature of it is the strength of it. So even if you're like, oh, I don't really like this smelly beastie that's come in, it's only going to be there for 10 more minutes and then you're on to the next thing. So yeah, I'm going to give it 5. I love it. Every time I watch it, I'm looking for new things. So my eyes are busy the whole time. So yeah, 5.
Paul?
I mean, I'm just really playing the same broken record again. It's going to be 5. Like, there's so much to just be part of and dig into and come away with. Like, again, it's just good stuff, yo. It just is.
It's just good stuff, yo.
Yeah.
Helen? So I forgot to mention that this is one of the ones, Netflix now has a thing where it tells you if it's one of the most liked, and this is one of the most liked on Netflix. So it's very popular. I'm going to give it a 4. This time round, I was a bit like waiting for it to kind of get going. I was enjoying it, but it wasn't quite the wild experience the first time round. So as Brain has called it, an average of that, I'm going 4.
Yeah, I think I'm going to join Helen on 4 there. I guess I was just waiting for the bits I liked a bit more. And also I was just kind of zoning in and out. So I think the downside with the episodic bit is that you can kind of zone out bits where you're not so interested and you kind of kick back in when you are a bit more interested in the scene, to its detriment. So I'm going to give it a 4, and that gives us an overall score of 4.39250.
Do you know what that means for it?
In terms of its what?
The rankings of Studio Ghibli films on Flixwatcher.
Have you done a collation?
I have indeed, yes.
Oh, you might have done.
So, our previous leader was Howl's with 4.31, and this has just pipped it with 4.39.
Oh, okay.
The really funny thing is, at the end of the day, I would pick Howl over Spirited Away. I just prefer Howl. But yeah, we'll take that.
Well, it's your choice, so obviously you want to champion
That's
it.
true. Yeah. You'd already done Howl's Moving Castle.
So we've done My Neighbor Totoro, we've done Kiki's Delivery Service, we've done Ponyo. Was any of them...
Pompoko, the raccoon balls one, which...
That's the most recent one we've done.
If you want to know what I'm on about, have a listen to our most recent Studio Ghibli, which is Pompoko, Raccoon Testicles. That's what that film is about.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, that's what it's about.
It's entirely what there's no other plot narrative to it. It's entirely about.
Guys, let's head over to Twitter. Do follow us on Twitter if you are listening and you don't follow us already, because we always talk about stuff on Netflix in general and film also. But we do ask for a shout out before we go into recording. Look out for a tweet saying something like this. We're reviewing Spirited Away with Girl of Gotham and at Paul Cinephile from Yearbook Podcast. Have you seen it? Tell us your thoughts and your score out of 5 stars for an on-air shout out on Flixwatcher. And we had one response today. Emma, can you see that response?
Yep, sure thing. We had a response from John Loftus saying hugely original, bursting with ideas and creativity, whilst being quite meditative, and gave it 5 out of 5.
I think the word vibe that Helen and I used leans into the meditative angle that he was referring to. Guys, can you tell us where we can find you online, and we'll say goodbye to the listeners?
Yeah, sure. For our podcast, we are at Yearbook Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. For either of us, I burned my Twitter to the ground, so you can find me on Instagram, Threads. I nearly said Threadless. That's a t-shirt website. You can get me on Instagram, Threads, or one of the 6 people on Blue Sky at Girl of Gotham. And Paul, do you want to?
I'm still on Twitter, although not really doing anything with it for reasons. At Paul Cinephile, I'm also the same thing over on Blue Sky, and I think on Instagram as well, because I don't know why. I think it is. I don't know what my username is on Instagram anymore. I use it way more, though.
Probably not the best place to get in contact with you, then, if you don't know what you use.
It is by far the thing I use most, and yet I'm like, what am I called there? I don't know.
Oh, okay. Because you just log straight into your account. You don't need to do the thing.
I just what am I watching? That. Whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Well, guys, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to finally get to talk about Spirited Away. I thought when all of these Studio Ghibli films came on to Netflix, I thought that this would be the first one that someone put, but it's been like 3 years now, hasn't it? So
I was really surprised it was still available.
So fair play. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Bye. Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher Podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty tunes, and Rockwood Audio's editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.